Okay. Hi, Samantha. I'm so excited to be here to do this story of hope with Samantha. And I don't know when you first were introduced for me, but we first met. Was it in October? Was it late October or early November when we first had a
I think
conversation?
so. Yeah, it was in the fall of
Yeah.
2023.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I found you earlier in the year, and I guess I discovered the Three Principles community. I don't want to say I discovered the Three Principles because they've always existed. But I finally saw their presence, I guess, in my experience and found like the Three Principles community in I think probably April of 2023. And then I was just sort of dabbling. I think you were one of the first people that I saw talking about it. And then I ended up in your community when you launched your monthly membership in
Yeah.
the fall.
Yes. And I was just blown away by your insights on your grounding and your peace of mind in the conversation that we had. It really stuck out to me, and so that even I'm curious to hear about it because it seems like you already have had a lot of peace and understanding before even coming into the three principles conversation as well.
Yeah.
Um, so maybe I'll just pass it over to you if you want to share, introduce yourself, share a little bit about your story, um, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah. So I'm Samantha, and I guess I've been on like what people are calling now a healing journey for, 12 years. And now I'm kind of at this point where like the healing is actually just in the living. And it took me, only 12 years to get there. But it started with some health issues that I was looking for answers for. And initially, this very innocent um, exploration of like food and spirituality and all the things, looking for answers, right? Because in that moment of being so shocked that you were previously healthy and then you're not, and you're like, what's going on? Am I dying? And it becomes so serious so quickly. But I was like innocently looking for answers in all these different places. And I am so grateful for so many of the different avenues that I went down, so many of the roads, and I learned a lot. And at the same time, it was a double-edged sword, right? Because it brought me into a lot more of that frantic energy of fixing and figuring it out and analyzing and like spinning my wheels. I call it scrat energy, like the little scrat video from Ice Age.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I have to see if I can definitely put a link. I need to because it's so good.
It just makes me laugh, and it gives me like, I don't know, it kind of puts a little humorous twist on that when it's happening for me. And I'm like, oh, there's that big scrat energy again. I've got my little acorn, and the acorn is like the problem that I think I'm solving, that I'm just unwilling to release my grip. And I feel like that was kind of the drawback to getting to that. Curiosity became more than curiosity. It became like this fixing and figuring it out. And I think the first big insight I had around this was actually when I heard one of your videos and you said something like, what if the only problem is that you think there's a problem, or like, what if there's no problem, something like that. And I was like, whoa. And then it just sort of hit me. And I think about this a lot. Like I'm always thinking about how to feel better, how to get better. Because in the last, 3 years, I guess mostly like 2021, 2022, which I think was a difficult time for a lot of people, on a collective scale, things were shifting, and regardless of like ideology, it was tumultuous for everyone. And I was also in a new space. I'd quit my job. And so it was this whole new dynamic in my life. And I think I just got so caught up in my own headspace. And that's another insight that was really valuable to me. Just seeing it as, oh, I'm getting caught up again, you know? Like not making myself wrong. And instead of like when I see that it's happening, not immediately being like, oh, quick, I better do something different. Oh, I'm doing it again. I better do something else. Like, I gotta stop doing that, you know? Instead, it's just like, oh, there it is. I'm doing it again. Because I was doing it a lot. I was like, my whole day, I'd be like in the shower. I'd be like doing the dishes. I'd be whatever I was doing. There was just this constant narrative in my head of like, I need to fix this anxiety. How am I ever going to get out of this? Like, and there was still that draw towards like figuring it out, thinking that I was going to find the one thing, I was going to find the magic pill, I was going to come up with this plan. Oh my God, so cute. I would always come up with these plans in my head. Like, this is like, I would come up with like formulas. This is so silly. But I'd be like, my new formula for like eating is going to be this, or like my new formula for like my day is going to be like, I would try to implement all this structure and formulas to like fix myself. And I'd be thinking about this stuff all day long, like literally just in my head all day. And then when I heard you say like, what if the only problem is that you think there's a problem? It really just hit me so hard that I was thinking about it all the time, thinking about how to fix myself.
Yeah. And it's like, I love that you had that insight. And we think there's a problem because we keep thinking that there's a problem. And like, I wish I had a better way of describing it, but it's like, it's just such a feeling that goes along with that when that rings true. Um,
Mhm.
I'm curious how your anxiety showed up. Like, what did that, besides, well, or in addition to, because sometimes that anxiety is just that low level, like something's wrong. And so how am I going to fix it? And I also think I love that when you notice and think the scrat energy, or, oh, I'm noticing, because it's noticing without judgment, which is so important. Like,
Yeah.
you're just, oh, like you're getting on to yourself about it. And some of it can be that, but did you have, were there other ways like physical symptoms, or um,
Yeah.
other ways
Well,
that anxiety kind of showed up for you?
I also want to say really quick, because this just came to me, but there is also this habit, I think, for a lot of people, me, like I'm people in this, this case. There's a habit for us to then say, what if the only problem is that I think there's a problem? And then we make a problem out of the fact that it's like this very cyclical experience. And then it's like you become trying, like, then you become like the person trying to fix the fact that you're trying to fix something.
We just were talking about that on like a smaller group that I had. It's like, sometimes you can use this principles understanding. Okay, so now I get it. And I'm always going to have a quiet mind. I'm going to be, we can put pressure on ourselves there of, okay, so I should always be present. And I should not try to fix anything. Oh no. And it's like there's so many opportunities to get onto ourselves when we are putting pressure on ourselves.
First question for me was like, well, but how? Like I had a discussion with Hannah in the summer of 2023. And I'm like, I get it. I understand the principles, but how? How do I disengage? I don't know how to do that. And the more that it's like so opposite of what you think is gonna get you there. But the more that I just released my grip and softened about it, the more it made sense. And like there really isn't a doing. And if you try to do the not doing, it just doesn't work.
No. And I think I love that you brought that up, because our brain, like our intellect, doesn't know how. Because it's like, what do you mean? So what's my job and what should I do? Tell me the 5-step plan, and that's why I think sometimes initially when people work with me, or they're like, they want and they don't want a plan. So tell me, how do I use these principles? When you understand, no, it's just in an understanding, and it's in a, like, the magic actually happens
Mhm.
um in the not doing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a seeing and a knowing and a feeling and not necessarily a doing. And that is so counter to what I think is going to work. I heard this on an OCD podcast and I can't remember who it was. So I feel bad I can't attribute it to the right person. But they were talking about how in in a lot of our like external world, you know, like a job or like lifting weights or whatever, there's so much of this like efforting that gets us somewhere. But when it comes to the inner world, that efforting just did not apply in the same way. And I really, really felt that. But I wanted to answer your question because I didn't mean to evade when you asked how my anxiety like showed up. Well, I would say that I was probably in a pretty stressful lifestyle before I got sick, before I started having chronic symptoms. That was 12 years ago. But at the time, just not having that awareness, it felt like, oh, this just came out of nowhere. I'm just all of a sudden, I have chronic symptoms. And at 21, being so young when that happened, it was jarring to my worldview. It put me, you know, face to face with mortality. And then I started having all the existential questions, which again, like led me into meditation and consciousness and stuff like that. But at a very surface level, and in a way that I was like kind of escaping. And then it led into nutrition, which was going to fix my symptoms because I thought, oh, well, I'm just doing something wrong. Like I'm just not eating right. I'm not, you know, taking care of myself the way that I should. And some of those principles are really great, you know, like I feel good when I eat good food and when I feel good to take care of myself. Like those things feel nice. I like those things, you know, but it was coming from this place, this intention of like, oh, there is a problem and I'm going to fix it by doing these things. And that how the intention and like how I was doing it was so much more important than what I was actually doing. And
Mhm.
it just kind of snowballed. Like in the beginning, it was the onset of my symptoms actually began with a panic attack.
Mm.
That was the start. I had a panic attack. I was on a run and I was really into fitness and I had been a lifelong dancer and competitively danced in college and I was out on a run and then all of a sudden I had a panic attack out of nowhere. And I was like, you know, out of nowhere, but I'm sure I know there was a stress in my life at that time, but in my mind, I didn't connect because I wasn't really paying attention. I didn't know to pay attention. And I started having these neurological symptoms, and it almost felt like after that panic attack, things were never the same. There was like a before and an after. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. They have like a before and after experience.
That's it. It felt like my life, you know, I'd been an anxious person, or I don't identify as an anxious person now, but I used to be like, I'm an anxious person. And then it was like after panic, it was like anxiety 2.0. It was like, oh my gosh. Um,
I thought it was bad.
I know
Now it's crazy. Yeah,
that.
I thought like something I never like knew what a panic attack was. I don't feel like we, especially in 2012, there wasn't really any mental health education going on either, like at all. Not to say that the mental health education we have now is really like optimal anyway, but we had really no one was talking about that. So I didn't really know what a panic attack was. I just thought, oh, I'm dying on the side of the road. You know?
Yeah.
Just thought that like something horrific was happening to my body and that I was going to die. And obviously I didn't die, but after that experience, it was almost like I was just in this heightened anxiety place and the symptoms were really cascading after that. And it's so funny now like telling this story, I'm even putting things together even more as I'm speaking. I'm like, wow, so it really is so connected to that. It really is a mind body experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, tell me what when you say that, what are you seeing clearly in this moment about the mind body experience?
um it's just becoming so much more clear to me. Like, whoa, I was in a stressful place and then I had this like almost like crisis moment of a panic attack. And then I sort of got stuck in that state and felt the anxiety just heightened because I didn't know. It was scary because I didn't know what it was, you
Yeah.
know? So then it was like this unknown factor of like, I don't know what happened to me that day. It could happen at any time. Maybe I have a tumor, maybe I'm just gonna die, and I'm so it was like the hypervigilance of like, I need to figure out what this is. And then that being in that heightened state all the time, um, yeah, of course, like being in fight or flight, your body can't really resolve things that are going on physiologically because it's not in that state of resolution and healing. It's in that hypervigilant state.
Yeah, yeah. That's such a great insight. I was just writing about my experience with my first panic attack, and after I had no idea what was happening. My psychiatrist did say, "Oh, this is a panic attack," but I was like, "I'm losing my mind." And then I had a big innocent overreaction for 7 years, like, because it was so
Yeah.
and my first panic attack was 2011, so right around that same time, but it made sense to me. It was like this innocent, we know that saying, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like, my intentions were good because I was like, oh my God, this was big and horrible. Now it makes sense to be hyper vigilant and to focus so much more on my nutrition and more on my sleep. And I'd already been doing all of that. And I think when I look back, I see how what I was doing was so well intentioned, but it was so over the top and out of fear. And a huge part was that I was so hyper vigilant because that was so scary. And I thought, I need to prevent it. I need to prevent it from getting worse. Because for me, the panic attack was scary. It might involve derealization, but I thought it was just like, if I didn't resist, I was going to lose my mind. And if I didn't do all these things, so yeah, it really played into me not going back to just equilibrium and balanced and rest and healing. But I thought it
Mhm.
would be irresponsible. I can't just relax. It was like, this was giant, or if I was relaxing, it was like, okay, now you're going to do yoga therapy and legs up the wall, and you're going to meditate, and you're going to do breath work. Like, it was pressured relaxing.
Yeah, yeah. I described that to my friend a while back as like almost this like attempt at like manual regulation where I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. Where now I'm like, I just I don't know. It's so hard to explain. It's like the difference between manual and automatic. Like it's just something that happens. If I'm listening, then I know when it's, oh, okay, I think I'm going to put my phone down and just go stand outside and do nothing. It's not like a, oh, I am feeling dysregulated. I am going to go outside now. And you know what I mean? Like this very robotic type of relaxation.
Well, I think it's being driven by the intellect, that computer
Yeah.
roadmap, which is kind of fear, where it's like, yeah, because when I talk about, and on social media, you only have a short period. And sometimes I do grab people's attention by saying, breathing exercises don't work. Um, but if someone is coming from a different place and it occurs to them, oh, I'm going to put on the insight timer and I'm going to do this breathing, great. Like, I love when you talked about manual versus automatic, because I did so much out of like that robotic fear. Okay, I'm going to rewire my brain. I'm going to listen to Joe Dispenza every single morning, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to meditate. And the energy that I was doing in would stop anything, and how I was eating, and like on paper, oh, she's doing a gratitude journal. Oh, she's doing this. Like, now when I fall into a feeling of gratitude, it's just, it's effortless. It's a feeling, or something occurs to me, as you said, to put down my phone and go on. And when I'm walking to the gym, just to walk. But I didn't do that from, oh my God, I have to not listen to anything and just walk to the gym. Like, um, we're free to do anything, but when we can see we don't have to do anything to be in our well-being, and to, um, I don't know, there's so many great points, but I'm curious. Okay, so what do you wish you in 2012 knew when you had your first panic attack? Like, what if there was like two things, or two, or one or three things that about your experience, or just the human experience, what's true? What are some truths that you know now that you didn't know then?
Mm. Well, I guess I just didn't even know what a panic attack was. I just thought, and I thought, well, it could just hit at any time, and didn't have that awareness of what was I thinking and feeling like leading up to that. You know what I mean? Because thinking and feeling in such a frantic, what's going wrong kind of focus was like so, and my just I wasn't really listening to my insights, you know, because if I was, I wouldn't have been in such a stressful, chaotic way of being. But I didn't know that until the panic attack alerted me. But even then, I didn't know that that's what it was alerting me to until I started to more deeply understand like my psyche and the principles. And I think something else I wanted to say too about just the, I guess the breathing exercises or the this and then that is that one thing I feel like the principles has shown me is that it's not that I'm just gonna like sit in a dark, quiet room and just meditate on the principles and never do anything in my life. It's like I'm not like a monk all of a sudden. It's more so now that I don't have to do anything, like you said, when you said I don't have to do anything. But if I'm present and I'm listening, then my insight tells me what to do. And it may not be what someone else's insight tells them to do. And it doesn't mean that like what I'm doing is like right or wrong. It's just I'm listening to my insight. And when I'm listening to my insight, like what I choose to do based on that urge or that impulse is going to be like so much clearer and powerful and effective and efficient than me like taking the analysis route and thinking that, oh, if I just apply this formula and do this and this in this very robotic logic driven way, that that's going to heal me. It's not going to be nearly as effective as just like listening to what my wisdom is telling me. And that I wish that I had that with
Hmm.
the panic attack experience. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't know, I didn't understand how the mind works. I didn't understand thought, I didn't understand feeling. I just went on what I knew at the time, which was there is a problem. And in my life, as an achiever and a person who is smart and has been told that they're smart, well, I must be right. My logic must be reliable. My intellect must be reliable, and therefore I'm going to let that, you know, guide me to trying a diet or going to see a million different doctors despite being told, you know, everything is okay, like you're healthy. And I was like, no, I'm not.
Yeah. Oh,
Innocently.
I love everything that you said because I completely 100% agree. Where you don't have to just sit there, if you're feeling anxious or panicky. Um, to me, there's also a twofold. When you know that you're going to get the guidance to do whatever occurs to you to do at that moment, given where you're at, in the middle seat on an airplane, at a restaurant, on a run. One, it frees you up from trying to remember what are the tools that I need for my toolbox? What do I need? What mantra should I like? What should I do? When you know that you have this inner guidance that's always there, oh, something will occur to me at the precise moment that's going to be fitting for that situation, where if you're on a middle seat, and I'm not saying these things of like, okay, I'm going to write these down, but like, if you feel anxious, something might occur to you. I'm not into this movie. I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to like whatever, like something occurs to you that is just what you said. And it's the spirit that you're doing it in is very loving and very easy, and so it's just has such a different feeling. And it's really the spirit that we're doing it in. I love that you said that. I think that, yeah, like I was doing everything right. I would try to do what was recommended, but then be like, like, why isn't the square breathing working? And it was all robotic and fear-based. And also I was resisting my experience, and then with the principles, it was like, oh, I stopped fearing it as much, but it didn't mean I didn't take care of myself. It meant, sometimes, yeah, it would occur to me, I gotta take a break from this computer or whatever, or like, but
Yeah.
something.
And sometimes I don't listen to myself even when I like I'll have that insight where I'm like, okay, I've spent enough time on here today, but then I like don't I just don't listen, you know? And then I might feel a little squirrely for a while. But it's now when I'm like, oh, well, I didn't listen to myself and I'm a little squirrely, it's like, okay, well, this will pass. Like that's kind of my thing now. Is like this will pass. Like I've had a busy mind a few times in the last couple months for like a day. And when I say a day, it wasn't even like all day. It was just like a little bit at night after I've had a stimulating day. And then I'm like, whoa, my mind is like really busy. I'm thinking a lot. And then I would start talking to my partner and I would be like, I would be like analyzing stuff verbally. And then I would get like halfway through my monologue and I'm like, wow, this is not helping. Like I just don't trust me right now. Basically, I straight up told him, I said, wow, I can just hear the story that I'm telling right now is just totally because I'm in a low mood. Like I will feel so different about this tomorrow. I posted a quote the other day that it was said, hope and despair are two different ways of telling the same story or telling a different story with the same facts. And I was like, whoa, hope and despair are two different ways of telling a story with the same facts.
Yeah.
That was, ooh, because that isn't that what happens though? Like when our mood changes, like the mood drops and it's like way different story, but same exact fact. It's like nothing changed in the last 24 hours about my life. Just me, just my level of consciousness, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love that because it's like there's some quote somebody in the principles said, in a different light, a problem doesn't even look like a problem. It looks like an opportunity,
Mm,
but when you understand that, it's like you understand states of mind and mood, it's like it really helps us and, not take it so seriously, but also understand this feels really big or I feel really hopeless now. But that can be a clue that just what kind of train of thought we're on or what story we're telling, what movie feels like it's playing, and we say, "Well, let me just wait a little bit." Um, it's and I think most people could probably relate to that, like, sometimes you're thinking that you have at midnight or 1 AM. Like, sometimes we know not to send that email or that text, and it's like, "Let me just wait on it," and then our state of mind changes in the morning, and we have more perspective. Um, I love that. I'm curious because it sounds like maybe you had a little bit of health anxiety, not to pathologize it.
yeah.
Do you feel like that was right? Or
Yeah,
or
it was a couple pieces too, and this is a good segue too to talk about agoraphobia and like monophobia, which for those who don't know, like agoraphobia is like usually it's a fear of like leaving your house or even for some people leaving a certain room in their house. And then monophobia is a fear of being alone or being by yourself. And I would say like the agoraphobia and just health anxiety kind of came together because in the instance where there was a panic attack while I was on a run, like the two factors were something is wrong with my body and I don't know what it is. And also, I am stranded. I'm out on foot and I have no way of escaping and getting to like safety. And those two factors really came with me into my life after that. And I actually no longer felt safe to walk on from my house to class on campus because I was in college. I unenrolled from all of my in-person classes and did online class. And I would and I still have some of these tendencies. I'm going to get there too because I also want to like add the humanness of like I'm still on my journey. But I would do this thing where I would always want to be the one driving. I would always want to have my car because I wanted to be able to get out of any situation as quickly as possible if I needed to. Because in that situation, I had to call a friend to come pick me up. I didn't have my vehicle, I didn't have my way of like getting to safety. So I would like, if I was going to go somewhere, I would also want to park as close as possible to the entrance so that I didn't have to walk very far from my car to the store. And then when I was in the store, I would get like a cart and I would use the cart as like almost a feeling of like stability in the store. Like I would feel safer holding onto a cart than I would just like walking freely because there was almost this feeling of like being out to sea, stranded, without anything to cling on to, without like a buoy or a life raft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just started, it really snowballed for a while, and I was using alcohol to cope a lot during that time. I was drinking a lot. And over time, I mean, I can't say what exactly shifted because I just don't know. There's so many factors and it's so long ago, but I did start to get better with a lot of the agoraphobia stuff. But then I had a relapse in 2021 and I started experiencing agoraphobia all over again. And this time it was like a million times worse. And I had gone through like a pretty stressful, like personal failing in my life that just like reignited a lot of anxiety and like self-devaluation. And I had started having trouble, like even just getting from like my house to like 2 or 3 minutes away in a car. And not only did I become a passenger princess in that time where my boyfriend started driving everywhere, but even with him driving, I couldn't go very far. I was just like, my nervous system was like on overload. And I resisted it for like a long time. I didn't have the principles understanding then either. So I was like really in resistance to it and really not accepting that that was where I was at.
Mm.
And at the same time, I was very lucky. You know, he worked from home and I was not working at the time. And so I really didn't have a reason to like be pushing myself, but I was pushing myself to, there was a lot of shame attached to it too, you know, like, oh, what's wrong with me? I can't even when I'm not the one driving, I can't get 5 minutes down the road, you know, like that's so embarrassing. And like having to explain it to people of like why I can't make it to certain events. I actually missed my brother's wedding.
Mm.
Yeah, which was really, really painful, you know?
Yeah.
I hope that that like maybe provides solidarity too for people because I know that I'm not the only one who's been through something like that, where it's like you can't really explain it unless you've been through something similar. And there's so much guilt and so much shame about being in that place and not being able to just like snap out of it.
I know. And thank you so much for sharing because I know when I was struggling with my, you know, when I was experiencing severe anxiety and panic and driving anxiety, I felt so alone and like, and I didn't think people would get it. Cause also I'm not saying the people around me didn't try to get it. They had no, you know, and so it just added to this um hopeless, really disappointed, terrified, isolated feeling. Where I felt just extremely different from everybody around me. And it wasn't for lack of trying, but it was for, you know, when it was big things about me not being able to go places or drive places, and missing events. Um, I would, yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And so when you, I know that the first time, you know, it was a couple different things in that recent time. Is there anything that you can that stands out that was helpful for you at having more comfort leaving your home and more comfort? Was that you when also experiencing like the fear of being alone in 2021 as well?
Yeah, that's when the monophobia came in. I didn't have any struggles with that until 2021. But I had been in a long-term relationship for a while at that point, and so I had kind of started to create a lot of safety around this person. And then in 2021, he had a period where he had to go back to the office for a short time, and that's kind of when the monophobia like showed up. And you know, I'll be honest, that is something that I'm still like that's still a thing for me right now. Um, but I have like loosened my grip on a lot of it. And I've just started to trust that like if I just accept that like it's okay that I'm going through this right now and like I have a loving partner who wants to support me in this way and like can I just drop the shame attached to that Can we just celebrate the things that have changed? Can I just look at what's going right? Because I was, you know, last year I was struggling so much with digestive stress. I was 45 pounds overweight from all of the stress that had accumulated through this time and the isolation that I was going through. And I couldn't leave the house like at all. And if I was going to leave the house, I would have to do like an hour of like meditation or something just to get myself down regulated enough to get out of the house. And then if we did go, it was like I had to be in the right time of my cycle, and he had to be, very like I didn't want him to like talk very much in the car because I was already so like frantic that I was just like, we can't talk about anything.
I don't get
Definitely
it.
not about me or anything stressful. Like it has to be very calm. So there were like all these conditions placed around it, and I hadn't been more than 15 minutes outside of our radius in a year and a half. And then there was, we had a lot of like clarifying conversations, and I dropped some of the shame that I had been experiencing. And then I lost my grandma, which was actually kind of a little bit of an awakening too, because it showed me like, it highlighted my why for getting better, because I didn't get to see her as much as I wanted to before she passed. And I was like, oh, like I was really in the thick of it in the last part of her life, and that made me really sad.
Yeah.
But a few days before she passed, I did make it out to my parents' house, which is only 15 minutes away. So like I'm telling you that it was pretty, I was pretty limited. And I did make it there, and I was able to like hold her hand and be with her a few days before she went. And then after that, I I just kind of had this reigniting of like my why, which is that I wanted to be able to show up not just for myself, but for the people that I love and care about. And I want to engage and be part of life. And I sort of like made this commitment to myself that I was going to do that in whatever capacity that I could, even if I couldn't do it to 100%. And I also just accepted like the fatigue, and because I was struggling to take care of myself. I had really bad chronic fatigue at the time. I was struggling to do basic things like making myself food, getting around the house, getting out and going for a walk, and just very ever so gradually, like after I dropped some of the shame and I dropped some of the rigidity around the diet and nutrition, and I had the insight of, hey, I'm creating a problem by thinking there's a problem. And I just sort of accepted where I was. It was a gradual unraveling after that over the course of about this last year. And I gradually was able to like loosen some of those restrictions. I started to feel like, oh, it's okay if I have to like make a trip to town while I'm on my period. It might be difficult, but I'm gonna be okay. Like even if I experience like a collapse afterwards or I have to recover, like I will recover and I will return to baseline. That
Yeah.
was another thing the principles really highlight for me, is just like you will always return to a better place.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, our innate health, like, and there's, I think so much, and what you were saying at the end to me, I also realized I wasn't so fragile. Like when we treat ourselves as like, okay, well, all these things, that's how we feel fragile. And not that we can't take care of ourselves, but it's like, oh, I don't have to live in fear. It's safe for me to go out during my cycle. I love that also it sounds like a big part was removing that shame, which when I talk to people, it's that shame and judgment that I do feel like is like that first layer that almost always needs to go. Not needs to go, I don't, not the right word, but it's like before the healing can happen, that shame and judgment. Um, because when we hate something, it ties it in a knot. That's what my mentor Linda said, and I think removing that shame, removing that judgment, then also we feel safe, because when we judge ourselves, it also judge ourselves and others. It does feel like danger. Like our computer brain doesn't speak English. So if we're feeling judging, because sometimes people think, well, how can I when I'm not leaving the house or I'm not driving or I'm not doing these things? And it's like, well, hating yourself isn't going to get you there, and it's such a big part. I feel like it just instantly moves us up in a little bit of consciousness, a little when we have that love and acceptance for exactly where we are, it moves us in that right direction towards
Mhm.
it's like it's such a great step. And I love letting go of the rigidity because that's to me very much like what a computer brain would say. Mine was always like, okay, this is your morning routine and all that stuff. And I had such a long night routine, but it was really like eye-opening when I realized I those things didn't ensure that I didn't panic, like, they weren't working anyways, and my life was so small,
Yeah,
like
that's what I asked myself. I was like, is this stuff really working? Because don't you think if you had like a nutritional deficiency, it would have been fixed by now? Because you've been eating like a damn saint for the last 10 years, you know? So it's like, obviously, it was a nutritional deficiency. You also tried like multiple different, like, sort of styles of nourishing yourself. So like it doesn't seem to me like it's a nutritional deficiency. And like it's obviously not working. And that was kind of where I got at the end of the year because I did find the principles in early 2023, but then I had sort of this like I was in like a pretty good space like mentally, but I was still dealing with a lot of digestive problems. And I sort of flailed around for a couple months in like late summer, early fall, because I had some really intense symptoms come up and I sort of lost sight of what I knew with the principles. And I started going to my old habits again of like, oh, maybe I'll work with this practitioner and I'll do this and I'll do that. But every time I would just like start to inch in that direction, there was this like little quiet voice that was like, your medicine is nothing, your medicine is nothing, over and over and over. And like it was difficult, but also made so much sense to start listening to that voice because I had already gotten a glimpse like the months prior. And so I just really had to like I had to trust that it was going to work out. I had to trust that voice. And I'm not saying that like working with a practitioner or doing X, Y, and Z is wrong. I just knew like I'd tried a lot of that stuff. And I
yeah,
was listening to my inner wisdom that was letting me know your medicine right now is nothing. And I told myself, I sort of like gave myself this little out. I was like, we're just going to try this for a couple months. We're going to try doing nothing. We're going to give it a shot. And you know what? If it doesn't work and it doesn't even provide you any relief whatsoever, then we could go back to our old ways of fixing and figuring out, analyzing, because that was working so well before. So we could definitely go back to that. But it was like almost like I'm going to have a trial period where I'm just going to like give it a shot, and not from a place of, oh, if I try this, then I will be fixed. But like just genuinely, like, don't you think it would just be nice to take a break? Wouldn't it just be nice to not think about it? And then if you do think about it, to just not get caught up in the fact that you're thinking about it. Like I just kind of took it as a vacation. I'm just going to try a vacation for a few months and see if it gets me anywhere. Like from just a genuine place of like curiosity and like giving myself a break, but also giving myself that like almost this feeling of safety of like, but if it doesn't work, you can always do the other way that you were doing before.
it's kind of like you try living in paradise, you try,
We'll go
try
to Hawaii, and
go
if
to
you don't like it,
you
you know.
always come back home. Yeah. I
Yeah.
loved everything that you said because your medicine right now is nothing, and that's why the insights that we have are going to be for us. Like that was your insight. That was and I very much too was like, let me try this out. Like, like, well, and then it was like, oh, this is more than just trying,
Like, what do I have to lose? Like what I'm doing isn't working anyway. So like I could try this other thing that may also not work, but it might. And I just started getting like the glimpses got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then like then I started to finally it started to apply to like the food and the
Mm.
digestive stuff.
Yeah.
And like I was eating two foods. I was eating two foods at a certain point in like October, November, December.
Okay.
So not that long ago. And
Yeah.
then I again had I had to have a clarifying conversation with someone close to me. I had to drop some shame and some stories about the food. And I also like realized that a lot of what was like keeping me locked into the thoughts that I was having about food was like this unwillingness to be wrong about it. Cause I had like poured so much like hope and like belief into this system of like nutrition is going to heal me, that to say, oh, like I'm actually making it worse with this just felt like, oh my gosh, I got it all wrong. Like shame on me, you know? And then finally I was just like, the insight came through. Do I want to be right or do I want to be well? Like it really came through as like, it's either I'm right or I'm well, but that's what's so funny about it is like if I'm choosing to be well, I'm actually choosing to be right because like being well is the most form of like rightness, if that makes sense. That's being right within yourself.
Yeah.
So my logic, my intellect, you know, may see it as being wrong, but ultimately like I'm in my rightness when I'm choosing to be well over, you know, sticking to some ideology that obviously isn't working for me.
Yeah. That is profound. I just had to write it down, but I'm gonna like, wow, I've just been, I just love this conversation. It's like, I don't know, not to be cheesy, but I'm like, oh, mic drop moments. Like that's what it was. Like, you know,
Oh, it
those
was a mic drop for me too. I was like, did I just produce that?
kind of, but the thing is, and that's what I love, like about it also, it's not even about the three principles. This is just this human experience. When we do less, we stop listening to other people. Like you have the most insightful wisdom for you. Like there is no, that's what I love about this conversation that we're having. It's like no one's more spiritual, no one's more wise. You have, and then when it falls away, then there's those mic drop moments and it's like exactly perfect for you. You know, where
Yes.
to me, your medicine right now is nothing. Do I want to be right or do I want to be well? And then actually, when I'm well, I'm also, it was just, those are like, I mean, I could feel, and I think also because I resonate with what you're sharing, like mind blown, you know, that's what I picture. Mic drop, mind blown.
Still working on this too. I again, like I just feel like I need to clarify that I'm like still so human and like right now I'm at the point where I'm still a passenger princess. I'm not driving yet, but I can feel it on the horizon. Like I can always feel when something's like coming up, like when it's coming up to like, you know, I'm about to expand in a new layer. And I'm like not rushing myself about it at all. I'm just noticing like, ooh, like I've been thinking about like driving myself down to the dollar store down the street. Okay, that's interesting because 6 months ago, that would have like the thought of it would have been terrifying. And now the thought of it is like, ooh, like I could do that soon, you know? And it's like, so I'm not doing it yet. So I'm not like, oh, I'm perfectly healed. You know, the furthest that we've been is like an hour and a half, and I was not the one driving. And, you know, one of the last most recent times that we went on a trip somewhere that was over an hour, I totally had a whoosh. I had a of like panic come up about halfway in. You know, we had just got done moving, so there was just a lot of thinking going on, a lot of just a lot. And I had a whoosh and I was like, wow, that's interesting. You know, if not in that moment, in the moment I was like, oh, this is horrible. You know, but later I was like, isn't that interesting? Because the month before I was like doing the same trip, like no problem. And so I'm just like in this place where I'm like, okay, like I've still got some ways that I want to expand. I'd love to be more independent. I'd love to be home alone more often and not feel so scared. I'm eating like pretty much all food. There is one group of foods that I still have some stuff around, but I'm not worried about it. I'm like, I just kind of am like, I'll get there.
Yeah.
Instead of, because I have this thing where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit better. Oh, my digestion's like, you know, a lot better. Okay, what's next? And it's like, can I just marinate in the fact that like my digestion is way better and I'm in a new beautiful home and it feels easy to go to town with my boyfriend when at one time that was like horrific. Can I just celebrate how far I've come while also knowing that I've got these other things that I'm putting on the back burner, which is another three principles concept that really helps me is like, I'm going to put this on the back burner. I'm going to treat this as like a side quest. It's
Yeah.
still there. I know that it's there, but because of how far I've come and how I'm now doing things that I never thought I'd be able to do again, I know that even those things I feel that way about now, I'll be there someday. And it may happen sooner than I think because in a lot of ways, there have been insights that have allowed things to happen all at once. And there have been a lot of things that have been really gradual, but that's part of the mystery. And like, I just know that I'm going to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. I have loved this conversation so much. And it's just been a joy, and I've been in a good feeling listening to you and learning more about you and your journey. And I so relate. I wish we could keep on talking and talking, and maybe we'll do like a part two, because the thing is, I'm still on my journey too. Like I noticed recently that anxiety was a temptation for me around my business and my mentor. But I'm like where you, I'm like I've actually, when I first had that insight in September or something, but I've been so okay. I can't wait to see how this falls away. Just because I've had expansion in all these areas, there's literally no rush. Cause I'm like, and then my friend even said on a hike, oh, you have anxiety about your anxiety business. And I think I'm in like the well-being business, but it just made me laugh so hard. And to have that lightness, which I think we started off with talking about, like, we can have a light attitude about our frailties, about the places that are still on the back burner, and just there's, when Dr. Pettit, one of my mentors, used to say, like, it's just about the journey. There's no destination. I'd be like, no, I'm going to get there and zero anxiety. And I have so much more expansion, so much more ease. And sometimes, sure, like there's still places where I can't wait to see where that expansion comes. But you are so wise and just like insightful. And I've loved this, and I know everyone's going to love this. So thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much, Lily. I've gained so much from following you and just from learning from your insights that you've had, and some of those have become mine and sparked my own. So thank you so much for everything that you do.
Oh, and thank you for everything that you do. And I wanted to just do some workshops, even though everything's always related, but a lot of people in the community were coming up that they want to spend more time alone, or feel more confident. So that's something that we're going to have, because sometimes it's nice to get together with a group that totally gets it. So that's something that I have, like, a workshop, or just getting together with people that are also with
Let's
that.
get together and reduce our fear of being alone.
I know, or just love ourselves, that we can also like have it, whatever, reduce the fear, like just honor wherever we're at, but get it. Yeah. So that's something that's coming up. And
Isolation is so key. It can be really isolating. So thank you for taking the initiative to bring people together on some of these topics that, a lot of us feel are pretty niche,
yeah.
but there's always somebody else out there.
Oh, I know. And it's feeling less alone, I feel like is like 50% of it. But I know you also have your own platform. And if you want to, do you want to tell people where they could find you?
Yeah, I'm Samantha.naturally on Instagram.
Okay. And I'll put a link to you, because I've known that you had talked about ruminating, which, unfortunately I have to go, but I would love to. And when I shared that, and I don't know if someone who had messaged you, I don't know if you got her message, but it sparked her own insights by you sharing. And she was like, oh my gosh, like it lit something up in her. So I know that this is going to light something up, and for people that as well.
Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Lily.
Thank you so much, Samantha. It was so lovely to connect with you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.